All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for coming today. It's a great privilege to be here with my very good friend, Paul Carlson. And I am, among other things, one of the organizers of this meeting. And I had a wonderful talk with Bill Hickey over lunch. And we were talking about how important it is for us to be together in varying formats. And this is one of the being together times that has really become very meaningful for our community. So it's great to see everyone come out every week. So a little background. I met Paul through a mutual introduction about what, 3 years ago, Paul, something like that? Three,
Yes.
3.5 years ago. Paul, can you hear? Can he hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I can. Yes. It was about 3 years ago, Bob. You're right.
Good. Yeah. Um, and we are part of a discussion group that involves some really good thinkers around the country, thinkers and doers. And after being together for maybe a year or so, Paul said, Fairfield is such a unique place. You should really enter Fairfield into the most intelligent city in the world contest. And I think I laughed the first time, because, the new Taipei city and that kind of thing is what we're competing against. But he said, no, no, you really should. There's something special happening in Fairfield. And I at him for about a year. And the next year he said, you should do it. So we did it. And it involves a community survey and then a community narrative. And the community narrative is 6 different domains. Paul can talk about the ICF domains and what ICF is and why this is significant, and his experience with City of Columbus. So we did it, and we did 18 different projects, 3 different projects in 6 different domains, and we did not win because well, actually, we no, we actually did win the first where we were named to the Smart 21. You get that with your initial survey. Then you compete for the top 7 by doing this narrative. So we worked on the narrative, put it in there, and we did not win. But I did hear from one of the founders who said, your narrative was so unique. What's happening in Fairfield seems so unique. Would you come to New York City to our international summit and talk about Fairfield? Which I did in October of that year. And it was one of the peak experiences of my life. It was fun. We made a slideshow and it was great. And so we competed again last year. We made a better narrative. We didn't win. We put in the survey again this year. We were named to the Smart 21 again this year. And now, between now and I think the 9th of May, we're going to be creating yet another community narrative. So, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you. And you can talk to people about, first of all, your background, former head of IT for the city of Columbus, and lots of other eminent things Paul's done. A first-rate thinker and a heck of a guy. And boy, does he have a sharp needle. So, Paul, over to you. Talk us a little bit about your background, and then let's talk ICF.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob. A little bit about my personal background. I've had 2 kind of careers, at least 2. One was in finance. I helped manage a $7 billion portfolio for the state of Ohio, and in technology, as Bob said. I was not the director of technology. I was the first IT project manager hired by the city of Columbus in 2000. And I worked for the city of Columbus for 17 years. My academic background, I've got a master's degree in history. I did spend 2 years at the Naval Academy in engineering. I was on the mayor's green team. That's what got me involved in the whole field of sustainability. So I was on the Mayor Coleman, who served 4 terms, which was unprecedented for the city of Columbus. Fantastic mayor. And so I was on the mayor's green team for 10 years. And I'm still on the city of Columbus's advisory board around sustainability. We were, as most cities try to compete for different funding, we applied for some funding from IBM Smart Cities Initiative, and like Defiance, we did not win that, or like Fairfield, we did not win that. And I saw the proposal for the Intelligent Community Forum. So I got involved in them. And as an IT project manager, it was my project. And I worked on that from 2011 until 2017. The first year it was 2012 that we made it to the Smart 21. The second, third, and fourth year, we made it to the top 7. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we won it in 2015. And I'm still an international juror, so which means when cities make it across the Smart 21 to the top 7, I get to review the material that's submitted for all the top 7 cities, and then we have these international jurors from around the world that then read all the material and vote. So I'm still doing that. When the city of Columbus competed for the US DOT, Department of Transportation, Smart Cities Challenge, the number one item that we submitted in our proposal as far as a recognition was that we were the number one most intelligent community in the world in 2015. That wasn't the only thing that obviously allowed us to win that $40 million plus another $10 million and we used it mainly for smart transportation. So I probably shouldn't be too confident, but I think I've gotten to know Fairfield well enough through Bob that I have no doubt that Fairfield can make it to the top 7. And actually, what's most exciting about me to talk to this great group this morning is you could actually win it one time. So Bob and I talk about how the city of Dublin, one of the suburbs of Columbus, Dana McDaniel ran that program, and that's the field that's the kind of the path that I think Fairfield should take. I was also the representative for Columbus for 3 years when Barack Obama started the Smart Cities Challenge. So I was in DC 13, 14, 15, and 16. I'm on the board of Resurrecting Lives Foundation. We help veterans that suffer from TBI, so I'm also a veteran. And I'm currently on a couple other nonprofits, but I'm working with Northwest Ohio. So Bob's gotten to know the city of Defiance through the work that Dr. Zeller and I are doing there. And it's also a rural community that did not make it to the Smart 21 this year. They made it the previous 2 years. And as Bob knows, that since the city of Columbus was recognized as the most intelligent community in 2015, we had a global celebration in 2016. And we're already planning, I'm on the planning committee for another global annual summit that'll be held throughout the city of Columbus and at our Columbus Zoo, October of 2026. So I'm excited that Fairfield will make it to the top 7. And hopefully, Bob, you'll be able to participate with us here in Columbus in October 26. That's a little bit about my background.
Your lips to God's ears. So I bet some people are going to want a little bit more information about what is ICF, Intelligent Cities Forum? Where did it come from? What does it purport to do other than name the smartest city in the world every year? And Doug says, why us? Why little old Fairfield?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, the 3 co-founders, there are 3, let's see, Lou, Robert, and John, and I think you've met all 3 of them, Bob. They're ex-telecom professionals. They're entrepreneurial. They're very technology savvy, and they differentiate the intelligent community group and what they do from the Smart Cities Initiative. And they started in 95 in Canada. They were probably the first group to actually talk about smart cities. But as Bob mentioned, they've got a unique framework. So since they're telecom guys, telecom professionals, the 6 indicators that make up the framework that you're judged on, and Bob was saying there's 18 different stories that you guys came up with. So the 6 are, the first one is connect. And your community was so smart, Bob, over 10 years ago, you built that great fiber infrastructure. So you've already got the apps. These guys love a smart city and intelligent community without a robust infrastructure probably is not going to make it very far in the intelligent community form methodology. So number one is connect. Does your community invest in fiber? Number one. Number two, which is great for this group, is are you innovative? So do you innovate? That's a second indicator. A third one is work. Uh, Jobs. Are you thinking about jobs of the future? What is the economic development? How do you sustainably develop? So those are the first three indicators. And then what differentiates the intelligent community from smart cities is probably the next three indicators, which are have you engaged the entire community? Do you include everybody in your community? Do you outreach? So I saw some of you are marketing individuals. So include, engage, and then the one that I always think is the most important one is the sixth one. And it was actually throughout the history of the ICF, there were only the first five indicators for a long period of the ICF history. And then the community itself said, you know what, you should add a sixth indicator, which I think is the most important one, and that is sustainability. So I thought I was pretty smart. Yeah, so I don't know, Bob, does that help? And then we can talk a little
I
more about
think
sustainability.
that helps give us a sense of the thing. So tell us a little bit more about what happened in Columbus as you competed, and why would a small city like Fairfield, and we may or may not ever be named number one, we may or may not ever be named top seven, although I believe you that we can. What is it about being involved in a process like that is inherently developmental? What do we get out of it?
As I mentioned, it was by making it the Smart 21. There's over 400 communities that compete every year. So that's a huge accomplishment just to make it to the Smart 21. Now, I think the history is biased towards the larger communities like Columbus. We got about 2 million people in our poor area. Singapore's made it, New York City, obviously, Stockholm. So you're competing against the big ones too. But what the ICF likes to see is kind of turnaround story. So for those of you in the audience that do have the marketing background, they like to see a community like Eindhoven that lost their Philips Electric, and they turned their community completely around. What I think is so intriguing about Fairfield that excites me is it's usually somebody like myself who was at the City of Columbus. I was IT project manager, oriented towards technology, and but for Fairfield, with this group of Traction Thursdays, for you guys, for you individuals that are passionate and love your community the way that Bob does, the city needs to be involved, but you guys would stand apart from the way you do it, because what's happened in Columbus or in Ohio, Cleveland started it, Dublin went next, then I found out about it, and I drove this for since then. Columbus, we've also had other entities. Hilliard made it to the Smart 21 this year. Westerville's made it, and I'm working with the city of Defiance. But guess what happens? When there's a change of administrations, when the mayors change, if there's somebody at the city that runs it, unfortunately, a lot of the new administrations, whether it's the same party or not, they don't continue it. But because of the way you're doing this, Bob, and your group, it's more of a bottom up. It's just a great way. So what was so interesting for me working at the city. I was able to meet the CEOs of Battelle, one of the largest research organizations in the world. I was able to meet the CEO of Nationwide Children's. I was able to learn more about the history of my own city around what happened when we put Route 71 through a very thriving African American community east of the core of the city, and it completely ripped apart that community. And my Mayor Coleman, revitalized that area. And when you make it to the top 7, one of the founders of the ICF will do a 3-day site visit. And so I would take one of the individuals around, and I always had the Lincoln Arts Center and the King Arts Complex, where there were memorabilia of the African American community, and that was the highlight of all the places that I took the co-founders that made Columbus stand out. That's why the engage and include, that we had an African American mayor, and our neighborhood pride program is what one of the areas that really stood out for Columbus, and what we did with that program. Does that help, Bob?
It does. Now, I know quite a few of the people here, and I bet I know what's going in on inside of some people's heads, saying, well, yeah, we've got some pretty cool things about Fairfield, but we got this problem and we got that problem, and we're not doing really great over here, and this is over there, and all that. What would you say about that in terms of why should we compete if we're not perfect?
Bob, that's a perfect question, because that's exactly what the ICF likes to see. They like to see those turnaround stories. So the greater the challenge that you've had and that you've overcome, and when you think back about Fairfield, the wisdom that your early leaders had about fiber. Think how significant that was and how important that is to your community. Then you've got MIU there, which really, Bob, listening to your background and listening to you talk a lot, I can see the influences that MIU has had to help round out your own mindset. And I like the individual that Bill, I think it was Bill, that talks about the commons. And I'm sure you know a lot about David Sloan Wilson and that whole idea of the commons. So that what strikes me about Fairfield from an outsider's perspective is, think about scale and think about how Fairfield gets to be an example for other rural communities. So that the way I see it, you can have a huge impact. So when we talk about winning, and we talk about telling 18 different stories, 3 stories per 6 indicators, one of the things that happened to me participating in measuring, the ICF really likes to see outcomes and measurement, and loves to see what the problem was, how you addressed it, and then what's the impact. So measurement is absolutely key. And one of the areas when Columbus was thinking about sustainable development and our mayor's green team and differentiating what we're doing versus the standard economic development model, putting sustainability at the front of it. And there was we actually used a model. There were 42 different indicators, and one of the indicators was environmental justice. We weren't doing anything about environmental justice. So when you think about sustainability and sustainable development and bringing the entire community along, measurement is absolutely key in figuring out along those 6 indicators, telling the Fairfield story, what is it that you might be missing? And I like your approach, Bob, as far as when I read your responses for the top 7 toward becoming the top 7, I thought for sure you would have, as an international juror who reads these all the time, I thought for sure you were going to make it to the top 7. So the group that you've formed there, the more people that review the current 18, and as you said, you were going to try to do replacements. Look at, well, you know what story, what are we missing out of those 6 indicators? Who else are we not engaging with? Who else are we not including with? So from an economic development perspective, I always, when I talked spoke in Montreal and was a presenter, a keynote presenter on smart cities with a lot of economic development individuals, I challenged them and said, are you thinking in terms of sustainable development? So once you start thinking sustainability, and I thought it was pretty smart, you know, I worked on the Mayor's Green Team for over 10 years, but when you see what Europe's doing, there's an entity called the Sustainability Transition Research Network in Europe. And our country's so far behind. Yeah, so we probably shouldn't get too much off on a tangent on sustainability, but go ahead, Bob.
Well, great. Well, we've had a good discussion so far, and I think it's time to pass the mic around. And who has a question or a challenge or a clarification? And Alex has the mic, so who's got a question or even an observation?
Back of the room here. One sec. That's okay. I need the steps.
It seems to me, and I'm sure you're doing this, Bob, that you work with the chamber and with Terry to get your stories for this
Oh yeah,
thing.
absolutely, absolutely. We have worked with all of the economic development folks. This year, I want to cast the net even wider. We don't have a lot of time. It's due on the 9th of May. One of the reasons I wanted to slot Paul in now is just to kind of help people understand, okay, this is what's up. And then I'm going to be asking people who want to be involved in doing the narrative with us to raise their hand, and then we'll pull a wider group together, and that I think will be all to the good.
So, Paul, I've got a quick question. You've outlined some best practices and things that Fairfield should be thinking about as they are becoming a smart city. What are the biggest failures you've seen, and what are the train wrecks that what are the things we shouldn't be focused on, the shiny objects that could be distracting along the way?
Great question. I would focus on the ones that are the most difficult, right? I mean, you've already got your fiber infrastructure, so I think you're probably really good on the first 3, the connect, the work, and the innovate. So those are the ones that I think that you're really going to stand out on. The ones where you're probably going to have the most difficulty is, what are your minority communities? How do you actually engage and include those that have been excluded in the past? I think that's where I think Columbus really stood out. We did have an African American mayor, and we had, we destroyed their community, putting Interstate 71 through the community. So Mayor Coleman and neighborhood pride. I mean, every neighborhood we focused on, so the entire city would show up. All the chief, the head of all the different departments would go to every single neighborhood. We'd focus on, I don't know, maybe 6 to 10 per year, and we did it for 16 years. So I would think the areas where I think sustainability too, you could really, with what you're doing with the food web and what you're doing there with Transaction Thursdays, I think you'll really do good in sustainability. So the 2 that I think you're most in challenge going to be is, what are the communities that you have neglected? What about environmental justice? I mean, have you even thought about where are you putting your chemical waste? Is there an area of the city where, so those are the 2 areas I think that would be most challenging and might stand you apart. Plus I think the world is recognizing with climate change and with sustainability that rural communities should be, Bob, I don't know whether the group probably doesn't know much about the Rural Resilient Hub and what we're doing with our Friday group. But I think the more the world recognizes the current situation, rural communities are going to stand out. So I think the timing for Fairfield right now is almost perfect. Hopefully that answered your question. Thanks.
Other questions? Here we go.
I just have a comment, and it's regarding our first Fairfield Sustainability Coordinator and really funding that over the long term. It's a decision that's up for, I guess, the city to continue funding. And I think we all need to pull together because that's a very important piece for us in terms of not just our own efforts, but also for this effort for smart cities.
Great. You have a question?
I'd like to see the narratives of the 18 areas. Do you have that on a web page where they?
It's not a web page, but I can get it to you, Doug.
Yeah,
I'll
point-
actually hang it on the Facebook group, our Traction Thursdays Facebook.
Okay, and then do it in a way so that can be shared
Yeah,
around.
yeah, I'll do it as a link,
yeah.
as a PDF link. Yeah.
I've got a question back here.
I'm not sure if this fits under the environmental justice, but it does in my mind here. We have a real opportunity in Fairfield to push forward regenerative agriculture practices in a really special way. We've already had some good traction in there. Would that fit in under that category? Is that something we can really make some progress on and stand out with?
Boy, I don't know about you, Bob, but I really like that because, you think about chemical waste. I know in Northwest Ohio, doing work on smart water initiatives and even the water treatment plant at the city of Defiance with fertilizers and chemicals, regenerative agriculture. I love putting that in an environmental justice. Yeah, I think it can fit.
Got another one?
So I have a question along the same lines as to whether or not this would fit. I'm relatively new to the community, and I see like many communities, there's a big political divide in the community. There's also a big divide between MIU and the city in terms of collaboration. And if we had initiatives to bridge those gaps and create a dialogue between the communities, would that be considered part of criteria that would be favorable for our efforts in this way?
That's the beauty of innovation, right? And to include those two in the topic, because you wouldn't normally think that would fit in innovation. But the beauty of what you're doing right now is a small group and brainstorming and asking those kind of questions. The political divide is just obviously tearing not only the U.S. apart, but also Hungary and many other countries from around the world. So I think that's an amazing topic. And collaboration. I was the main contact between the city of Columbus, or one of the main, and Ohio State University. And a lot of times the universities, even in the city of Defiance, it took me a long time to convince Mayor McCann, and not so much Mayor McCann, but the city of Defiance, to do as much interaction with the Defiance College as possible. And now they've got a Defiance Alliance where the city and Defiance College are working aggressively together. So yes, collaboration across with MIU is absolutely critical. In fact, I think, I hate to kind of say it this way, but I didn't think we were doing enough with Ohio State University. We used their analytics, their business, Fisher School of Business, and their analytics department when we did our 3-day interview. But for trying to win this and getting to number one, we had a whole day out of the 3-day site tour. We did an entire day at OSU and the new cancer center. So it allowed me to interact more with the president of OSU at the time, and we had a provost that the president dedicated to the ICF. And I think she was critical. I think the fourth year that we did this, focusing on that collaboration between the city and OSU, and having a whole day of the 3 year at OSU and the different areas, not just analytics, really helped win it the final year. So great question. I totally agree with both points you made.
Danny?
Well, I have one, and I might throw you back on your seat a little bit, but with my business mind, I always think of like, what's the counter argument? Because that always helps me to move forward. So what's the counter argument to what you're proposing there? What would be like the top 3 points to not doing what you're doing? And why would people be against it? And I ask that because I think it's just a great, healthy brain exercise for all of us as we gain our businesses. Why wouldn't we do what we do?
Great question. In fact, I won't mention the individual's name because he might view this on the tape. But one of our leading individuals thought this was nothing but a dog and pony show, and getting the award really didn't mean anything, and winning it didn't mean anything. So I like what Bob said early on. What is winning? Winning really is having these 6 indicators. What are you missing? What is it? Look, it's really about pride of the community, right? And that's how Bob stands out to me. He's got so much pride, so much love for Fairfield. And I think everybody that's attending this group shares that same kind of passion. So the worst case is that this bottom-up group is thinking about, how do we make our city stand out? And then I'll emphasize this again, because as you tell your story, other communities can learn from you. That, in fact, for the individual that talked about the commons, right? And small groups, and when you talk about competition and individual competition at the smaller group level, how do you get groups to work together? One of the things that I've asked Bob, because you guys, in my mind, are so exemplary on the things that you're doing well, how can Northwest Ohio, the city of Defiance, learn from Fairfield and vice versa? That's why I think city government and universities don't, it's so easy to be in your own little silo, right? And do your own little thing. It's really hard for this group and for groups to work together. And for me, what I think is most exciting about Fairfield, to really spend the amount of time that Bob already has on this, is that what can other rural communities from around the world learn from Fairfield? So the counter argument isn't, to me, it never was a dog and pony show. Although the city of Columbus did win the $40 million, and that was the number one thing that we highlighted, that we were recognized objectively as the most intelligent community in the world. So competing for the $40 million US DOT Smart City Transportation money, we highlighted that. So it does help get money for projects that, as Bob and I talk about with the Rural Resilient Hub, that's not everything it's about. I sure hope I answered that all right.
That's a tricky one. I've got a quick sort of thought. When I work with entrepreneurs and they want to go out for venture capital, when they want to win something, I always ask, have they got sales? Have they already proven that their product is worth something? How important are endorsements from other organizations, support from, say, the Iowa Department of Economic Development? How important is it for Fairfield to demonstrate other entities and organizations that have invested into the community?
I think that's going to be key. It's like Battelle, right? So I had to have somebody like Battelle, one of the leading research entities in the world. That's where I think brainstorming around what's the difference between economic development and sustainable development in the world that we live in today, and how can a rural community stand out and be an example for other communities? How does the business community, because unfortunately, as we're probably all aware, the stigma of all CEOs or many CEOs are it's all about the bottom line. It's all about profitability. So I know in Columbus here, I started on, I said I was on the advisory board for sustainability. I suggested about 3 years ago that we start an ESG, Environment, Social, and Governance Committee. And we did. But I knew it was getting political, so a couple of years ago, I said, "Look, let's just back off a little bit. It's getting real heated politically. When you got West Virginia, you got Texas, you got states out there that are bad mouthing ESG. So we kind of reframed our language, and actually, our governor and JD Vance passed legislation that prohibited our retirement funds from investing in ESG. So I think the challenge of a rural community is, as the previous question was, this political divide. How do you how does the business community and the stand out and engage in a moral and yeah, I don't know. I guess Bob, you could even answer that one a little bit better than me, maybe.
Well, I'll throw something at Paul. Go ahead. No, good.
Hold on one
Then
second.
Bill didn't get a chance. I'm sorry. Yeah, Bill first and then Paul. Sorry about that.
All right.
Hi, I'm the guy that talked about the commons.
Ah,
I have a couple of points. One, I am so confident and sure, beyond doubt, that this is going to happen and work. These people are going to come together and they're talking about what is good for Fairfield. What common values do they have? Not what various extremes of position. If we don't have a position other than our common value, then we can start with that and go forward step by step by encountering what we know to be as a group, to be unifying and to be the truth. Now, my point is, how much of that do you have to have? We haven't met to do that, but I've got probably 100 megabytes I can send somebody in a vast detail from PhDs, from trustees at MIU, from mayors in the city, and councilmen and selectmen and everything like that. So how much action do you need to put into it? Or is it the good concepts that are available that we're ready to try?
Bill, I think that's why the marketing people that are in this group, I had an individual, Tricia Strawler, that wrote a weekly column for our economic development for years. And without her tremendous ability to write, so obviously this, what was it, Bob? Did you have about 95? I know when I worked with the city of Hudson, we had 95 pages around these 18 different projects, action-oriented projects to describe them. But you've got to be succinct and a good writer. And Bill, I think you're right on. I mean, for the common values and for every story to kind of tie together around, and this is where I don't know, I don't know that much about MIU, but from what I've learned from Bob about MIU is these values, these common values, that to me could be a unifying theme within each 18 stories, and it builds. So since I'm a juror, right, I've got to read all these. So from 7 different communities, and I'm truly convinced you'll make it to the top 7. So But as a juror, I don't have all kinds of extra free time. So I don't want to read 105, 120 pages of 7 different communities. So to be able to succinctly express the core of what Fairfield is about around these common values, around those 6 themes, is critical. So having somebody help Bob write this and different points of view, but make it unifying, that's key. So thanks for those comments, Bill.
So I think we had a really interesting day here about a month ago. And there's a woman with a product she was selling at the
Yes.
market. It was an almond something.
Cashew almond thing. Yeah.
By the time she left, there was some world domination business plan, through almond milk, presented to her. And, I think one thing is might know there was an incubator program on campus with, I can't remember the professor's name, but one thought I have is just in this room, really, there's a scary amount of expertise and knowledge and in many aspects of business. And I think maybe Traction could take a mentoring role, in addition to the networking that's already going on. Traction or something like that could be a mentoring role to nurture businesses. Have like a brainstorming or a mastermind that they would come in and say, okay, have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? And then we could take a relationship to our community where we celebrate, the whole thing going on with, your business is really a miraculous and thing that everyone's, excited about. And so, a lot of us are consultants, but, we'd be delighted to brainstorm or nurture a bit and have that kind of like the feeling that Fairfield is a place where people support you. It's not all about billing you, but they want you to succeed. When you succeed, we all succeed. So maybe some kind of role for Traction or some entity like that could be there. So entrepreneurs would feel supported.
Excellent point. And Alex, you can even speak to that about what is the genesis of Traction Thursdays. And we've had quite a few sessions with people like Clarissa who came with a simple idea and all of a sudden they end up with, world domination through cashew bliss, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And certainly that is the
Lee's got a comment.
That is the intent of Traction Thursday, or 1 million cups, which was started by the Kauffman Foundation to build communities 1 cup of coffee at a time. In this case, building the entrepreneurial community 1 cup at a time, where we share these resources amongst ourselves and build that out where your mentorship might need a marketing person and somebody else might need an accountant, and they then form those relationships that evolves into the place to go for that mentorship. But each business has different needs for that mentorship. Now, it could certainly be bolted on as a formal component to tap the mentors that are at Traction Thursday on a regular basis. It's an interesting idea. We have a question in the back of the room.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Hey everyone. So I'm going to be like the naysayer sometimes here. Off and on, as some of you know, I've been here in this town off and on for many years. I have different memories of MIU. I have yet to see a lot of growth. That institution always seems on the brink of economic disaster. That's what I hear. We're close to bankruptcy, blah, blah, blah. It survives. I was just in Oskaloosa for an arts conference with all the regional placeholders for the arts community in Oskaloosa. I had never really been to Oskaloosa, but it was nice to see a different town that has good store frontage and, places that look not abandoned and run down. And I'd love the Main Street program to kick off here so we can take Mohan Delights and other storefronts and actually have pop-up art galleries and things that make us look like we have a downtown vibrant presence of commerce and industry. As some of you know, I helped co-found and with Kevin and a group, and shit happened back then 12 years ago when it was just like, hey, this building, knock a wall out, let's make a collab, let's do it. And so, for example, when I go to different film festivals and I attend Entrefest, and I'm like, where's the downtown film festival in Cedar Rapids? And that's a tough nut to crack here as well, because film festivals don't provide a dividend at the end of the day. They're a labor of love, really, for the city or town. So I vacillate on trying to start that here. But for example, the Blue Rose and the never-ending journey of Alex Stanley to get it complete and start opening those doors this summer, I will be really excited to see those doors open because I want to see it happen. I want to see shit happen. And so I get very frustrated here. And as you mentioned a second ago about, and you know my document, and about cross collaboration between the city and the town and MIU, there's a lot of people who don't want to see anything happen that way, where it's cross pollination, such as my Test Drive the Domes program. So I really hope we get, I don't know what do you get when you get in the top 7 of this thing? What do you get?
Great question to you, Paul. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think I've mentioned it a couple times that when we competed for the $40 million US DOT Smart City Challenge, that was the very first thing we highlighted as far as, so when you compete for federal funds and you're telling your community story, we beat out Austin, we beat out Boston, we beat out Seattle, we beat out Kansas City. We told a story based upon achievement. And we one of the things that happened for Columbus, we had centralized power, with the Wolf family, with the Columbus Dispatch, and then the gentleman from so there was a group of CEOs led by, I can't think of his name right now, from the Limited, that said, you know what? We've got to diversify power in this city. And this was probably in the 60s and 70s. And we called it the Columbus Way. The Columbus Way is collaboration across power centers. We don't want to be beholden to one entity that controlled the entire city. We're not going to grow that way. So we got to diversify the power center here. So what do you get for making it to the top 7? I think it's your group that you've got right now thinking about those 6 indicators, and it's not even, making it and winning it the way City of Columbus did. Obviously, it helped us, and it was one of the reasons why we received the $40 million and an additional 10. So I think it's just pride in your community, and it's a way to tell your story and to collaborate across, engage and include as many people as possible to have that sense of place, to have that sense of pride. And how can you lose? I mean, it's just going through the process of thinking in terms of what is it. So being a naysayer, I don't, that's exactly the type of individual that communities need. Somebody that see things that aren't being done as good as they should be, and creating that momentum and the influence to change things. So Waterloo won it 1 year from Canada, and it's all about their film what they do. What do you go to Waterloo for in Canada? It's their film festival. So taking a rundown, one of the things that stood out for Hudson, they had a fire in the, I don't know, in the 60s or 70s in their downtown. So they had to redo their entire downtown and fireproof it and make sure. So it's those challenges, it's those what you said, it's those naysayers that are absolutely critical to making a community better. So I don't know. I hope I answered that.
All right. Well, I think you've given us a North Star to shoot for, and it's good to have the naysayers as well as the optimists and that collaboration between all of them. Thank you for your time today. Let's give him a quick round. I'm going to turn it over to Bob to wrap it up.
Okay. So, Paul, thank you very much. And Lee and everyone who hung in here with us. We are not perfect, are we? Communities go in cycles, downtowns go in cycles, everything goes in cycles. But the one thing I know for sure is someone did a study long ago, looked at the historic records, and the question he had is when civilizations in the past made breakouts, they gained population, they became preeminent. And he looked at what was, recorded. And the question was, did they start talking really great about themselves after they became great? Or did they start talking great about themselves before they became great, before they had the population, before they had the infrastructure built? And his evaluation was in 100% of the cases, they talked about themselves in future terms before it was real. It's no trick when something is obvious to state the obvious. It's a real trick to see something that could be, that is not, and you call it into existence by virtue of your imagination, by virtue of being able to be together. So that's what this thing is all about. Yeah, if we win top 7, great. If we somehow deserve to win number 1, what the heck are we going to look like then? Holy mackerel. So that's the game we're playing, and I really appreciate playing it with all of you.
This is great. This is great. So moving on to community announcements. Do we have any community announcements? A real quick announcement from New Boco. EntreFest tickets are on sale. As you know, EntreFest is a gathering of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial support ecosystem people and businesses in Cedar Rapids, Iowa on June 12th and 13th. Tickets are on sale right now. The early bird price is $149. It will jump up after Friday to be $249. And then as it gets closer to the event, it will jump up one last time with a week or so remaining to $349. So the early bird tickets are on sale. And we announced yesterday, we announced the first keynote speaker will be Lindsay Peel, and she is the national representative for Kiva Microloans, and she is an entrepreneur herself and also administers the Kiva program and is a very, very, very dynamic speaker on a national basis. So she'll be kicking things off. Bob.
So somehow my schedule has disappeared from my phone. Hopefully it's on my computer. Danny, you first, and then I'll talk about who's next, who's coming up.
Just to speak on a point that you were making there. At the very latest, there will be a huge announcement coming from Blue Rose in about 5 weeks. We're hoping to make that announcement in about 4. So just to let everybody know that there's lots of movement happening right now, and we're very excited about it. So just want to make sure that everybody's aware of it.
And Danny, thank you very much for your role in helping move things along. Gregory.
If anyone is interested, I'd like to follow up on trying to get Faith Reeves the continuation in the budget. And so I'm thinking about a letter or email writing campaign. If anyone wants to help me organize that, I would love to talk to you.
Great. And our speaker next week, I know for sure, is Galen Satterley, who started us out. He was our very first speaker. And he's going to talk about what's happening. And I know he hates it, but I make him do it. And if you want to look at the rest of the schedule, just go to the Facebook Traction Thursday Facebook group, and the pinned post has all of the speakers on it. So
There you go.
thank you.
All right. Well, any other community announcements? Going once, twice? That's a wrap for Traction Thursday here, and everybody have a nice spring. We'll see you next week.